Hey everyone, and welcome back to Bridging the Gap. Make sure to leave a like on this video down below and subscribe. My name is Alvin. I lead right on most issues, and I'll be representing the Republican side.
My name is Luke. I lean left on most issues, and I'll be representing the Democratic side. Hey guys, so in this video, Alvin and I will be giving you our bipartisan takes on how the Electoral College bias will look this year for the 2024 presidential elections.
Yeah, so as you guys probably know, since you're a viewer of this channel, you're gonna know that the presidency is won through the Electoral College. You need 270 electoral votes, as you can see, to win. And you get them from winning various states and districts across the US map, getting you to 270. And you don't win by winning more votes across the country. That's not how it works, as we saw in 2016 when Trump lost the popular vote but won the Electoral College. And so, generally, in the past, few decades or so, Republicans have had the edge in the Electoral College, meaning that they could lose the popular vote as they did in 2000 and 2016, but still win the presidency. And that's neither here nor there. We're not going to debate if that's a good or bad thing. We just want to see what is the Electoral College bias. And we've been looking at it. Harris now leads in the polling, in the national polling, by an average of 2.1 points in the
Yep.
RCP average. But Trump has a lead in the battleground states, which is what you need to win the presidency, of zero point 0.2 points. You can also look at the poly market betting odds, where you are seeing that most people think that the popular vote is going to be around a Harris win of 2 to 4 points right now.
hmm
But if you go and look at the actual poly market odds for the presidency, you'll see that Harris only is a minor favorite. And we're going to explain why in this video. You wanna talk about what do you want to talk about?
Yeah, we could go into the polling a bit here. So yeah, something we've been noticing in the polling recently, and this is our little nice little polling chart of some of the top rated pollsters, is that in a lot of cases, like when you look at like a specific pollster, for example, we'll take the New York Times since they have theirs fully filled out there for every swing state, that there's a decent amount of pollsters that have the national race extremely close, like almost tied between Trump and Harris with the popular vote, but still have Harris ending up like winning or being favored in the electoral college. For example, the New York Times poll has Harris winning Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin all decently handily by 4 points. So that's in all those states that would be a higher margin than Biden got in 2020. And those three states are a combination that she would like if she won that combination of states, she essentially would just win the presidency. And we see this kind of reflected um, over and over again across some of the states. Like, for example, again, like the Quinnipiac poll also shows uh, Harris doing better in those states compared to nationally. The Marist poll, I mean, it doesn't go for every state in the Marist poll, but in Michigan, she's doing better there in Michigan than she is nationally. So yeah, we've been noticing this sort of trend in some of these polls that there seems to be some reversion in the electoral college bias, which normally favors Republicans to potentially even according to these polls, at least these couple polls that could be suggested could be favoring Democrats this year.
Yeah, you also have some conflicting evidence. Obviously, you have the Emerson
Yeah,
poll, for example, which has the national vote D+4, but you see all these states are going to vote for to the right
yeah,
of the national popular vote, which I think is the much more likely scenario, right? Because
yes,
you take a look at all the data, and honestly, this might just be some sort of Rust Belt polling miss that we're going to see yet again in a Trump presidential year, because we've gone through this time and time again, and pollsters are unable to get that Trump voter in, Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. And so if you look at the 2020 results, you look at what happened in 2020, Biden won the popular vote by 4.5%, and he barely won the presidency under a point in three states, Wisconsin, Georgia, and Arizona. If Trump, moved the needle in these three states by a tiny bit, he would have won the presidency. And so you would know that Trump could have probably won the presidency, losing the popular vote by around 4 points. We're going to take a look at what these maps would look like compared to the 2020 election. So we're going to start off with the best case scenario, basically right now, for Kamala Harris, which
hmm
is her winning the popular vote by 6 points, which would probably be an electoral landslide here. It's basically in the betting odds. If we go back to the popular vote betting odds, right here, you'll see that this is basically her best. possible scenario. Past
Hmm.
6 points is sort of just wish casting. It's not really real, not in the realm of possibility. But here you see D+6. She's gonna win every swing state, including North Carolina, if you shifted everything to the left by 1.5 points of 2020. You go to
Hmm.
D+5. She still handily wins the presidency. Doesn't get North Carolina though, but it's doing great. But you move into the sort of most likely scenarios, like a D+3 year or a D+2 year. Right now, we're sort of forecasting somewhere in the middle of that, right? Probably D
Hmm.
plus 2.5 or so. You're going to see that Harris barely wins in a D+3 year, and she barely loses in a D+2 year, signaling
Yes.
that that's why we're seeing right now that the election is a coin flip, right? Because she's in the middle of these.
Yeah, to some extent, I agree with that. Yeah, like again, nationally, it is pretty much a consensus that Harris isn't going to do as well in the popular vote as Biden did in 2020. I say pretty much because I'd say it's like 80% of scenarios where she does worse. She ends up doing worse than Biden. 85% of scenarios where she ends up doing worse in the popular vote than Biden. Something else I'd note is that she still has hope in these scenarios because, I mean, again, as we noted before, if those polls are correct in the college bias reverting, which there is some reason to believe, according to these polls, then then potentially even with the country shifting right, say a point or two, maybe Wisconsin and PA aren't as red as they are in this map in actuality. And also, it doesn't like, this kind of something else we should note for our viewers is this kind of trend in like just looking at 2020 and seeing how much of a margin change affects the whole map doesn't really account for statewide trends and like states that are trending blue faster or red faster. Um, so yeah, but like for this scenario, like yeah, this is the map we have for this.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, because you're gonna likely see, I mean, if we go along these maps, we have D+2, D+1, and only in D+1 does Nevada, for example, flip red. And we know that Nevada is gonna move more to the right than this. And we know that Arizona and Georgia have been shifting left for a while. They're probably not gonna vote for Trump by massive margins, even if the country does shift far to the right, just because of
Hmm.
the local shifts in the area. So you have a point. If you go here, you'll see. I think this is D+1. It's already a complete Trump sweep across the map at D+1. At net zero, he picks up North Carolina at a likely margin. And the probably best case scenario for Trump right now in R+1 year would, just send the entire
Map, yeah.
Sun Belt into likely red. So it's probably not going to happen like this though, like we said, because of the trends. And that's why we're projecting less bias for Trump in this year's electoral college. We think that a lot of the states are doing a lot more Democrat. The swing states are trending a lot more Democrat than the nation as a whole. And the reason for that might be because these populous safe states, like New York, for example,
Hmm.
like California, although Harris negates that factor a little because she's from the state. These states are shifting to the right. A lot of people are moving from the state. There's a lot of weird dynamics in these individual states. For example, New York City has been shifting to the right for some reason. Maybe because of crime in the area or what have you. Some issues are just more stronger for Republicans. Maybe because there's such deep blue states, the voters, the women in the
Hmm.
state know that abortion is not going to be a problem for them. They're always going to be able to get an abortion, and so
Yeah,
maybe they're more likely to vote on the economy now. While in the swing states, you don't know
it's
that. You
true.
don't know if your right to an abortion is protected, so you might be more likely to vote Democrat just based on that fact alone. And so you have a lot of local shifts. So that's sort of the story that we're looking at here.
Yeah. And yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like if you look at, New York polling, for example, like, on the map there you have like New York voted for Biden by like something like plus 20 or like plus 23 or something like that, I
Yeah.
believe. Um, right now the polling suggests, New York could be a lot closer. I've seen polls with like Harris only up in New York by like plus 17 or like plus 13 or plus 14. That's, in some cases that's like a 9 to 10 point shift, which can be big in like in terms of the popular vote because that's thousands and thousands of voters in these very populous states. Um, who are now moving toward Trump. I mean, obviously, it doesn't really matter because of the nature of the system we have, the Electoral College. But in terms of Electoral College bias, it does it could have an effect of like reducing that bias. And yeah, you brought up California also. Like to some extent, we saw this. Yeah, like I mentioned New York. Um, there's some evidence this is occurring in southern New England states like Massachusetts and Connecticut, although we need more polling for that. California, you mentioned before, yes, like some polling also suggests that it could get closer, but it's not to the extent like that New York shifting right, according to the polling, which I presume is because Harris is from California, so she's obviously going to be
Yeah.
stronger in her
Trump
home
is from
state.
New York, technically, but
Yes, actually, that is true. That is true. He's technically from. I mean, he abandoned the state for Florida, but yeah, you're right. He did form his business empire there, so maybe that could be behind it, possibly to some extent. Um, but yeah,
yeah, like obviously you also know that Biden was from the Northeast, so like, and you're more likely to be able to cast Kamala Harris as an out of touch Californian. There's a lot of California hate right on the East Coast, for example, and stuff like that. But no, in general, I think we're hitting the mark here because like a lot of these populous states that are now off the table are shifting to the right. Like Florida used to be on the table, but now it's likely just going to be a Trump victory there. New
mm,
York, is obviously going to vote for Harris, but it's shifting to the right. And in the past, you saw, these populous states like Texas and Florida in play for the Democrats, which opened up a lot more paths for them to get to 270 because they're so populous. And Florida was, obviously used by Obama to get there. But nowadays, you have Republicans locking down like Ohio and Florida, which are big electoral
yep,
prizes. And so once you lock down these big states and Trump able to stop the bleeding in Texas with his appeal to Hispanics on the border, which I think was a really good move because if not, I think Texas could have bled into the Democrats' column by now. Yeah, like that's very important to hold the popular vote. And we're seeing that also. Like if you look at, I know you're not supposed to dive into crosstabs, but if you do dive into like the New York Times Siena national poll crosstabs, you're gonna see that Trump seems to have narrowed the margin in places that don't matter, like the Northeast, that and stuff like that, while
mm,
losing some ground in like the Midwest. And that's weird, right? Because you're like, Trump should have more appeal to the Midwest than the Northeast, but uh not really. There, he is actually doing better somehow in the Northeast compared to like his race with Biden, and like that can be for a lot of factors. Like obviously Biden's from Delaware, but I don't know. So that's just the extent to that. Trump's gonna do worse than like Lee Zeldin in 2022, but he's still gonna
yeah,
do better than he did in 2020 in New York, and that's huge for him in the popular vote, but kind of useless for him in terms of winning the election. So.
yeah,
All right. Well, we're about to wrap it up here. As you know, a lot of recent polling, right? Especially in the popular vote. Some stuff looks really good for Democrats and for Harris, right? You see all these big polls with Harris at 50 or over percent that would suggest a big result like this for Harris at D+5, D+6. Well, you have, Quinnipiac and New York Times and stuff like that giving Trump supporters hopium, any sort of hopium that they can cling on to. It's weird though. I mean, you see these same pollsters putting Harris up in Pennsylvania, so we don't really know. You saw Rasmussen with that Tide poll in Pennsylvania, but Trump +2 nationally. So I don't know.
yeah,
Is Pennsylvania gonna vote to the left
yeah. Even
to the right of
Rasmussen is
Rasmussen?
interesting.
I
Yeah,
don't know. I don't know. Like, is Rasmussen really gonna miss to the left in Pennsylvania? I don't know. So we're really gonna just have to see. This is a really exciting election. So make sure to subscribe for future content. We're almost at the October predictions, right? A week
yep,
away from that, which we're gonna release a new projection. We're gonna do our new best and worst case scenarios for both sides. We're doing Senate predictions. Finally, our awaited House prediction eventually,
yep.
governor's predictions, and all sorts of things. So make sure you subscribe and ring that bell. Yeah, like this video down below. Comment down anything to help us with the YouTube algorithm and share this video with their family and friends. Thanks for watching.
See you guys.